Welcome to the very first Hunt Harvest Health podcast with Ryan Lampers and me, his wife, Dr. Hillary Lampers. This podcast is an accumulation of the 20 years we spent in the sustainable living, backcountry hunting, and healing fields. When Ryan started his Instagram account about a year ago, at my urging, he didn't realize how many people were out there just like him who live, eat, and breathe backcountry hunting. We also started getting so many questions related to consistency, how to be more sustainable, how to raise a healthier family. Then Ryan won a Train to Hunt entry, and well, the rest is history. In today's episode, we share our story. It's fun looking back on all the memories that have made us who we are. We are very lucky folks, and we look forward to sharing more about our lifestyle, interviewing other amazing individuals, and creating a wonderful community of people interested in living a more sustainable lifestyle. We hope you enjoy this podcast, and thanks for being here.
Okay, welcome to the very first Hunt Harvest Health podcast. My name is Ryan Lampers, and me and my wife, Hillary Lampers, are going to take on this whole podcast thing and see if we can get out a bunch of information that we're always getting asked questions about. Obviously, in the title, Hunt Harvest Health, I am a big time hunter. I live to hunt basically, and we're really into the harvest and health of everything combined with hunting and gardening and just overall healthy living. So my wife Hillary is a naturopathic doctor, and so I think she's got quite a bit to add to the health aspect of what us hunters do and things that we can do to improve ourselves going into a season or recovering from a season, and
or how to maintain your relationships while you're a hunter.
Boy. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Hillary.
We just want to get out there, things that we do in our lifestyle that people seem, for some reason, they have an interest in, or they have a lot of questions about, everything from food preparation. We're really into, I'm really into gardening. So what you can do with a garden, and how, you can prep food, whether it be for hunting or just everyday living throughout the different seasons. So food tips, health tips, little hacks that we tend to go with, and just basically, how we've become so self-sufficient in our life. It's kind of one of my things. As I get older, I definitely prefer to do everything on my own. I like prepping my own food, getting my own meals. Nothing comes out of a box. Hopefully, it comes out of the freezer, out of the garden. So. We're pretty healthy these days. It seems like we're in our 40s, and we seem to be doing all right health wise and energy wise. And what's my biggest thing, and I think a lot of people who have kind of followed me through Instagram and StHealthy Hunter.
Yeah, that's a good story. We'll have to talk about that story.
So yeah, but it seems like most of the questions I get these days from young hunters, and as well as anybody in the hunting world is the food prep. We like to take the the animals that I take and break it down ourselves, do all the cut and grinding, different meals that we make with those animals and with the meat that we take in the fall, and also how we add to the meat aspect with various greens and vegetables and everything out of the garden. So I am a canner. I do a ton of food prep, and canning is involved in.
It's very sexy, ladies. Yeah. Actually, I think the biggest comment I actually get from women is, "Can we borrow your husband for a weekend? Can he teach me how to can?" Yeah. Oh my gosh. How did you end up with him? Hey, you want to tell that story, actually?
Oh, what's that? Which one?
How we met?
Oh.
Talk a little bit about ourselves so your listeners can get a little bit more info on you.
All right. Well, obviously, I'm a big time. I love to hunt. I live to hunt. I've always been a into the outdoors. I love to hunt, fish, hike, any kind of adventure in the mountains. From scouting trips to simple day trips with my daughter. We love to mushroom hunt and shed hunt and anything that gets us out there and kind of into the mountains, into the woods, and away from the city at all costs. We try to get away from the city and get out there and spend more time in the mountains. And so that's a big part of my life. Obviously in the fall, I do take a lot of time off and get out there on these hunts, and it takes quite a bit of time away from the family. So I think my wife has a few things to talk about as far as how hard that is, and what we do to deal with that. But so me, I'm in my 40s, and so obviously health is something that's getting more and more important. For me, I just want to maintain what I've always trained for, and endurance, strength, the ability to just keep going in the mountains, pack out animals, and this and that. So,
and I think mindset. Don't forget mindset.
Yeah.
I think it's all mindset, actually. Most of it's mindset.
Oh, as far, yeah.
Everything. Everything that Ryan does is very much mindset. He's puts his mind to something, he does it. I'm much the same way. He would probably agree. I'm a royal pain in the you-know-what, just because I put my mind to things, and I do them sometimes to the dismay of everyone else. But why he's so good at what he does is because he has a really strong mindset, and he's really good at suffering. He can handle some serious suffering, and he actually enjoys it. So I
do, actually. It's weird. I think every year that goes by, another suffer fest on a hunt, it just kind of gets you to where you actually like it. Yeah. The story at the end of it is always better on a true suck fest versus an easy hunt. There's not much of a story behind it, and never really get as much out of an easy hunt versus a really hard suck fest or suffer fest up in the mountains. So yeah, I do. I actually enjoy the harder, the worse it is, the better.
Well, when I met Ryan, first of all, let me just preface by saying I am not a hunter. So for all of you ladies out there who don't hunt, you probably understand where I'm coming from. But when I met Ryan, I wasn't a hunter either. And he had some pretty awesome hunting stories. We've been together quite a long time. So, he was pretty young still. And I was always like, geez, you should write a book about these things. You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah. So let's get into how we met.
Let's get into this.
Enough about me.
We don't really talk about this very often.
Hill and I actually, we were very different people. Out of the gates, we were pretty different. I was a fishing guide in Alaska, and spent quite a bit of time up there. Well, she came up and worked up there. We met at a fishing lodge up there, and I was kind of a new guide at this place, and we met and hit it off, and came back to the States here. And
I love your description of this. So actually, Ryan was in his early 20s. He was just a baby face, shy. You think he calls himself shy now, but shy now is like, he was so shy that he would not even look at you as you passed him. You almost thought he was going to pass out if you just even looked at him, And up in Alaska, if you've ever been to Alaska and you've ever worked or been to one of these kind of remote Alaskan lodges, when you're a woman, you're a rare commodity.
Well, if you're a hot looking woman, yeah.
Yeah, if you have all your teeth and you're of normal weight, you're pretty much on the chopping block the second you step off of the plane. So when I got off of this plane, I was greeted at the because I think the rule is that we had to greet every person who got off a plane. So everybody who was in camp, if unless you're out on a boat, you had to be up on the plane
Airstrip.
And you had to greet the person coming in. You did all season 2 when you had clients come in, everybody went up and greeted them. It was kind of practice for that. So I got off of this plane and I was there before clients came. We were still setting up the lodge and doing that kind of thing. I was a massage therapist at the time, and I was going up there to work a summer to do massage, which I thought was going to be like some fancy lodge resort. And it was literally like 2 rooms on a wood walkway in a mud pit is basically what it was, because, you know, up there in the tundra, it's pretty wild. So I get off the plane and there's literally like, so there's no clients there now, it's just guys. And there's all guys about Ryan's age, some a little bit older, and they've been working up there for about a month now. No, there's like maybe 2 women in camp, I think. I don't know.
It was basically just a bunch of sweaty, stinky, nasty
fishing guys. I mean, yeah. And all bearded up,
drooling over the hot
massage therapist. Oh my gosh, I got off and it was like instant like I need, you know, I needed bear spray kind of situation. Every day men were coming to my room and asking me to go on a walk with them. A walk there was you had to go with a man because he had a sawed-off shotgun. Because the grizzly bears were out. And so you could only walk on the airstrip, and it was, I don't know, what, a quarter of a mile long or something? I don't know. It was short, so you go for a walk. You want to go for a walk with me? Or I got a bottle of wine. You want to come to my room? You want to? It's like, oh my gosh, just, you know, leave me alone. It was craziness. When I saw Ryan, he was very shy, didn't look at me, didn't want to talk to me, didn't come over and invite me over, none of that stuff. And I thought, ooh, that's the guy I want to talk to. And so, as you can tell, you'll learn with Ryan and I is I'm usually the very outgoing one. I talk too much, and I'm not shy. And yeah, he just kind of sits back. He just sits back,
and that's why
waits.
She's going to be a huge part of this podcast, because she will be doing the talking for the most part, I hope.
No, I keep telling him people don't want to hear me talk.
I'll throw a story in there every once in a while, but
no. The thing is, he has the good stories. That's why you want to hear him talk. So, anyways, we met up there, and we met a lot of our good friends up there. We made a lot of good relationships. Ryan had a really epic job, and he did that for 7 years. Yeah. We were together 2 years. We got married, and he did it for the first 5 years of our marriage. And not only did he go to Alaska, for a couple years he went to Kamchatka in Russia, and he was a guide over there for some wild steelhead projects, which was a really great experience for him, not necessarily for me, because
yeah, it was basically 5 months out of the year, being in Russia or Alaska. That's kind of a hard thing for relationships to take.
Yeah, I mean, I think months. If you
very little access to even a phone, or
if you're probably married to military or something, you probably understand that. But this was back in the mid-90s.
Yeah,
we didn't have even really cell phones that you could call. So we had a satellite phone at the lodge, and you could call. They'd let you do a phone call every week or every 2 weeks.
Super expensive,
and it was so expensive.
Had this crazy delay that you really just got more frustrated.
He would call. It's like I literally would sit home, make sure, because I had a landline at the time. He would call, and then it would be like, hello, and then he'd respond. And then he'd say, like, how's the weather? And then the phone would die. And that was it. Like, you wouldn't get anything. And, when we were married, it was really difficult because, I had to make decisions. Like, should I buy this lawnmower? I got to pay this bill. Like, I got to do this stuff. And he wasn't around. So that, obviously, as far as relationships go, when you're dealing with somebody who's out in the boondocks and you can't get a hold of him, you're kind of married but single. So it was a really interesting time, but Ryan was one of the top guides. People loved him like they do now. They all wanted him to be their guide. He didn't like to drink, so he saved all his liquor that he would get from clients, and he would start bartering during
Definitely
the season.
Definitely not a drinker. I don't drink at all. Never have. It's just never sat well with me. So, yeah, when you hold your booze up there, it's good bargaining power. So if I ever needed some extra flies that I couldn't tie myself or whatever, I'd just trade a couple beers that I never drank, and it's pretty easy bargaining chip, really.
Pretty epic time up there. And I only went back 1 year. I didn't necessarily like it. Ryan he was a guide, so he got to get out of camp every day. He got to go out on a
we were
boat
up every morning,
day.
you know, by 6:30 we're hopping on the water in a jet boat or getting flown somewhere. And, you know, we'd spend all day, you know, we'd cook our clients lunch on the river, some type of salmon. And then we'd probably roll back into the lodge sometime, I don't know, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. And so we're gone, you know, all day long. And then of course we get back and we're just dog tired, and, you know, you just kind of want to eat and tie a few flies and go to sleep.
And that's when I would go to work. So all these old guys who could pay $10,000 for a week to have Ryan catch them fish. The problem is they couldn't get in and out of the boats very well. And by, you know, midweek, they'd be barely walking. So that's what I was doing. We didn't see each other very much up there, but I never got out of camp.
I think we got you out of camp one time. We did a fly out somewhere.
We did two. We did a fly out to Katmai, to Katmai Falls, or
Brooks Falls.
Falls. And then we did the very first time I ever went fly fishing. So I grew up, a little bit of background on me. I grew up in Montana. I was born in Colorado. I migrated north with my parents from Colorado to Wyoming, and we landed in Bozeman, Montana, which probably a lot of you outdoorsmen out there, you know where Bozeman is, because it's a pretty epic place. And I was lucky enough to grow up there in the 80s and 90s. Now I graduated from high school, went to 2 years of college, and then I was like, man, I got to get out of this small town. Like, you know, back then Bozeman was a small town. Now Bozeman, if you go there, when I left Bozeman, I lived in a trailer park that was on the edge of town. Now that trailer park there's a couple miles all the way to I-90, the Costco and all that stuff's built up. I mean,
Bozeman has completely changed. It's that trendy little town everybody's like fighting to get into.
Yeah, but back then it was like, you know, everybody knew your business, everybody knew who you were, and I just had enough. So I wanted to move, so I moved to Seattle. Packed up my car. My mom reluctantly helped me pack my car. I think I had $800 in my pocket that I worked that summer to clean. I cleaned hotel rooms. Moved to Seattle and went to massage school and was getting ready to go to college again. And I needed a summer job because I'd had a foot surgery and I had to make some money. So I got this job in Alaska working at this lodge, and I put my stuff in storage and headed up there. And so that's kind of where our story starts. I did learn to fly fish there. So I think this is back to my original thought. I grew up in Montana, and my grandpa used to trout fish. We used to go in Colorado quite a bit. He was from Texas. We do catfish, and then in Colorado we did tons of trout. But he wasn't a fly fisherman. And when I met Ryan, he taught me how to fly fish. And my very first trip out of camp was he talked the boss into letting me go on a half-day fly fishing with his clients. Was it your clients? Yeah. And we went out, and I got to get out and fish, and I did almost drown. I think at one point he had to pull me out of a current that I
didn't quite have, you know, the basics of how a river worked at that point. Just walk right out into deep water and start bobbing downriver. But taught her how to fly cast and fly fish. Caught a nice trout that day, and nice short day out there, and got to see what we do a little bit.
It was awesome. I left, and our relationship continued, and then he asked me to marry him, which was kind of funny in itself. That's a story for another time, but
it does kind of relate to how we are. I mean, when I did ask you to marry, I kind of made you go through a little suck fest of your own.
Dude, are you kidding me? You're always making me go through a suck fest.
I wanted to see how tough she was, so I took her on this just steep hike that, hell, it was raining, it was wet. It was kind of a muddy, rooty,
it was along a waterfall. You literally were climbing up a waterfall, and which now that place, they have a trail there they built. It's like,
it's totally
like a
different
boardwalk now, but back then in 96?
Yeah.
That was no boardwalk. And
it's this beautiful Lake Serene.
Lake Serene.
Like, you know, it didn't have a good trail going up to it, but I figured, well, I got a ring in my pocket. I'm going to make her suffer through this. She was hating me about.
Well, not only that, let's remember the 2 nights before we had went to dinner, and I'd said to him, because this is how I was back then, you know, I was very responsible. And I said, okay, I've been waiting for you for 2 years now. You've gone to Alaska, and he had been back, and, blah, blah, blah. And I think we need to make a commitment. And I think, you need to make a bigger commitment. And he looked at me and he said, I told you when we met that I'm not marrying material, that I'm not getting married. And I was like, what? He'd just been gone for 5 months.
I don't even remember any of that.
Yeah, of course he doesn't. So he got me all upset. He told me that he was not marriage material, that we were not going to get married, and that he couldn't give me that commitment right now. And of course, I went off the deep end because that's the emotional roller coaster I live in sometimes. And we went on with it. And then he says, let's go for a hike. I was so peed off that he wants to take me on this hike. I was like, ugh. And takes me up there, makes me climb this waterfall. I'm filthy. I'm sweating. I have dirt under my fingernails.
Yeah, every time I looked down, because I was kind of leading the way up this steep ravine, I'd look down and she'd just have a scowl on her face. And it was cold and wet and not the greatest day to be up there, but there's nobody else up there that day.
No, sure. And we were sitting on a rock, and he was sitting behind me. We were eating cookies or something. I don't remember. We were probably eating organic cookies, right, honey?
I don't know. Back then, I don't
He pulls out a box, and I look at it, and I'm like, well, that is not a cookie. And he opens this box, and there's this little diamond in there, and he says, will you? That's what he said. I think, will you? And I said, will I what? And he says, well, what do you mean, will you what? Will you marry me? And I said, is this some kind of sick joke? And he says, that wasn't quite the response I was looking for. I said, I thought you weren't the marrying type. He said, God, I'd already bought the diamond. I already had this thing planned. And just like you got to go and try to ruin my surprise. And I was not going to let you ruin my surprise. And so once I got over the kind of like, wow, he's actually serious. We're actually going to do this. Then, we were engaged. So, that was our God, how long has it been since we talked about that story? Holy cow. Long time.
20 years, seems like.
Yeah.
I, in the off season, I would do that all summer, basically from May through, I'd come back just, unfortunately, back in those days, after elk season. It was late September, early October that I would get back. And at that point, I did a bit of hunting and what I could. And then, after that, I would do some fly fishing or some local lakes. I'd lease these lakes and stock them with big rainbows and basically get guys out there and teach them how to fly cast and show them how to fish and take pictures of their big giant rainbows and basically, babysit on these lakes. And I had a few leases going, and that was pretty successful. Got to meet a lot of good guys and just bring guys out and basically show them a really good day. And I do that in the spring, just before heading back up to Alaska, and a little bit in the fall before it got too cold to catch trout, and get guys out in their float tubes and pontoon boats. And that was kind of what I did for work back then. So, yeah.
And then I came home one day and said, I'm going to go to medical school. Yeah. And he looked at me like, okay, what kind of craziness are you thinking now? And I said, I'm going to go to medical school. I'd been working for a number of years for a guy a doctor who did a treatment that I do now in my medical practice, and changed my life. And I was working for him, and I was seeing all these miracles, and I was like, but I wanted to be, the doctor. So in my mid to late 20s, I didn't even have my bachelor's degree finished, because remember, I dropped out in Montana, moved here, and was going to go back to college, but then met Ryan, and we kind of, started our life, and then I finally figured it out. And so then I went through many years of school. It was 3.5 years to get my bachelor's degree.
Seemed like 10 years.
It was about 10 years total.
Yeah.
It was probably 9. I don't know. It was a long time.
Yeah.
We did take a year off between undergrad and graduate school, a doctorate. I took a year off. I didn't work. I taught yoga. I was a yoga instructor. I gardened. I grew flowers. And we used to be big backcountry skiers. We love skiing. Yeah. Ryan actually taught me how to ski too. Funny enough, I grew up in Bozeman, Montana, which has some of the most epic skiing in the world, really. And my parents didn't ski. Skiing was really you had to have money to ski. It was not back then even, it wasn't a very cheap sport, to get all the equipment and stuff. And I also had a foot defect in one of my feet that I didn't catch till I was later on. And so it caused me a lot of pain to put my foot in the boot. And so I had a lot of issues. My girlfriends would take me skiing because they'd all go skiing, and they'd take me up once in a while and leave me up on the top of, South Bowl looking down on moguls and be like, see you later. And I couldn't do anything but snowplow. And so I had a lot of pain in my leg from it, and I had a lot of fear. I had tons of fear of heights. My fear of heights was pretty epic.
Shoot, we'd take
hiking
you up even
and stuff. Oh my gosh. I
just on the chairlift, alone, the chair ride up, it would just freak her out. She'd get lock-kneed basically, and just not be able to move hardly on anything steep or anything where she had to look down, and basic super fear of heights, which was pretty tough to be a skier.
Yeah, well, not only
go to these places, in other states, and you're up in these epic mountains, and you just go lock-kneed and not be able to come down.
Well, the great thing about Ryan is that he has so much patience. He's amazing with his patience. And so when you're teaching fly fishing, come on, teaching somebody to fly fish is basically like the worst job ever. So, people are getting mad, they're just frustrated. He'd just be like, okay, you can do this. Same thing with skiing. He finally said to me, he would take me on hiking, and he'd take me on these crazy hikes where I literally thought I might die if I took another step, and he would just be like, you can do this, you can do this. I say this, but he was a beautiful skier. He's one of those people that ski and you're just like,
it's not what I was going for.
Oh, I want to ski like that guy. So he just said to me one day, honey, you need to learn to ski. He took me up the first run and he said, okay, we're just going to fall. That's what we're going to do now. You're just going to turn. You're going to fall. I was so afraid of falling, falling at a high rate of speed, breaking my neck. Like, I don't know. I had all these horrible images in my head. And after that, I just fell in love with skiing. And I started skiing. We started skiing all the time. And so we really love skiing. And that year that I took off from school and work, we did 3.5 month ski trip.
Yeah.
Yep. We traveled across the Rockies, down all the way.
Washington to, where did we hit first?
Idaho.
I think we hit Utah first, went down, hit Alta, did all those resorts down there, and then kind of scooted over into Colorado and Steamboat and up into Montana, and from there hit stuff around Bozeman and up to Big Mountain, and then up into Fernie. And
yeah, BC was our favorite place to ski.
Yeah.
It's pretty epic up there in the Canadian Rockies.
Yeah, that was quite a trip. I mean, that was like...
We were sleeping in our Durango with our 3 dogs in Walmart parking lots. We were, young, and we saved the money, and we were able to do that. And that was really probably one of the best years of my life. I wasn't working. I wasn't under high stress. I wasn't in school. And we got that time together. Then I went to med school for 4 years, and that pretty much trashed our whole life for 4 years. And then...
took all the fun out of life at that point. Nothing fun about med school.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend it for anybody that wants to actually be married.
Of someone who is in med school. No fun there.
No. But that was now almost 10 years ago that I graduated. And had a practice here in Washington for 10 years. I had a practice in Bozeman for about 6 years. Since then, we've had 2 daughters. So we have had a very eventful life since I got out of med school. We had kids. A lot of things changed around what we were doing with our health. Like we were really health conscious before. I was pretty health conscious just based on my health. I didn't have great health. I feel good for a lot of time. So I was searching. I was always searching and very much into nutrition and stuff like that. And I'm probably the one who started all of that with Ryan. And
yeah. I used to pride myself on, being fit. But I was never really super health conscious as far as what I was eating. I always ate healthy, Growing up, we didn't have a lot of sugar. We didn't get the sugar cereals.
His parents were like mine. They were pretty strict with that stuff.
Yeah. We were eating the grape nuts versus the Lucky Charms in our house. So, but yeah, all the super healthy stuff that we kind of got into later, with the foods that we eat, the organic foods that we eat, the food prep really changed.
My bachelor's was in nutrition.
Yeah.
And so that's when I really started getting into it. I worked in a couple places like Hippocrates Institute in Florida, and where they're doing raw food and sprouts, and I had a lot of education in basically growing your own food and just eating organic, and positive repercussions of that. And so we started gardening. Actually, I'm the one who started gardening. The problem was I went to school. I went to med school, and I pretty much had no life. I mean, my hobbies got thrown out of the window. I used to do a lot of things, and ski and paint and garden and do all that, and I just didn't have any time. And so Ryan actually was the one who picked up the gardening, and he is the one that's gone.
Yeah, I've gone a little crazy with it.
You're the gardener now.
See, way back, I used to despise gardening. I couldn't figure out for the life of me. My dad was a big gardener growing up. So I would hit, midsummer, and I'd see him out there picking weeds and, doing whatever you do to a garden. And then all I could think of was steelhead on the river. I could not make sense of how you could go from there's steelhead swimming up the Skycomish. I could be out there catching those versus standing in the garden and weeding. So I used to make fun of him and just could not figure out what the appeal was to have a garden and grow it when you could be doing, these fun things out there. But, I've definitely changed.
It's called age.
Yeah, I guess. Definitely got a lot smarter. Because now...
now we're talking about all this fun stuff we used to do. Jeez, I'm like,
now I've gone a little crazy with the gardening, and I just love it. I look forward to it. I look forward to the end result, all the food that I can put up in the off season with it, the canning and all this kind of thing. So yeah, I've totally switched roles there and taken over the gardening.
Yeah. And when we first met, we used to do bird hunting because we had bird dogs. We had short hairs.
Yeah, I used to do a lot of checker hunting, a lot of pheasant hunting, some deer hunting.
October would come around, and his whole family, his dad and his cousin and him, they'd shut the business down, and the guys would go deer hunting.
You start off with your rifle deer back in the day, and I did a lot of bird hunting, obviously, like I said, but then it kind of went to, I met some guys actually through the lakes that I was guiding. One of these guys, ex-quarterback for the Seahawks, John Freeze, he set me up with his old coach, who was this big-time elk hunter, archery guy, and out of North Idaho. And I'd had a lot of interest in doing that and getting into bow hunting more. And so he kind of set me up with this guy. And I think Dallas was his name. And he was in his 60s at the time. But we met, had him over, took him out for a day of fishing, and we hit it off. And he basically invited me over to show me the ropes in the North Woods of Idaho. So, I had shot, my bow, before that, but that kind of really pushed me into bow hunting, and I really got serious about it. Learned just an absolute ton from this guy who had done it his entire life, and so I was pretty lucky in that respect to meet a guy like that who had all these little tips and tricks, and all this wisdom throughout the years that I just got lucky enough to run into, and that was phenomenal for me. Super lucky for that. But, from there, I've kind of taken it on and hunted a couple years with him. And then, obviously took that and ran with it here in Washington. And every year I'd go back to Idaho, and then things kind of branched from there. We'd do, obviously archery was the preferred way to go after elk. And then, I did a little bit of muzzleloader hunting back then too for elk. And I'd actually done more muzzleloader hunting than anything, back in my teens and this and that. We'd go to Idaho and get bulls in that late season. But, the bow hunting really didn't start until I met this guy, and he really sparked my interest in it. So, but yeah, after everything has kind of blossomed from that, as far as definitely adding more weeks to my season every year. So now it's like late part of August through, I don't know, end of November is kind of the last hunt for me. That's the late Montana deer.
Yeah,
hunt.
And when we decided, okay, we're going to have kids because we're getting older, we better do this thing. He was like, we are not having children between September and like December. And I'm going, what? That's like almost half the year. Yep. Nope. Not going to do it. I don't want to feel guilty because I'm going to go hunting. And so fortunately for him and for my girls, one was born in January, which is the perfect month because there is like nothing going on in and then our second one was born in April. And
first day of turkey season.
First day of turkey season. Day before tax day, actually, is how I think of it. But so we've been I was lucky there because both our kids were not born in big game hunting seasons. And you know, he'll be around for that. And I think another one of our reasons for wanting to do this podcast is actually I will be totally honest, you know, it's not that I wasn't supportive of hunting season. I just wasn't very excited about hunting season. I didn't have parents who hunted. My dad, you know, his dad hunted. He grew up in Texas, and my grandpa was he went deer hunting, and he was a fisherman. But my dad just didn't have it in him. You know, I think the thing with hunting, and we'll probably talk a lot about this, is that sometimes, you know, I won't say you either have it or you don't, but there's definitely the guys that are good hunters, the guys that do it, and the gals that do it. There's something inside you, you know, that makes you be able to do it and really love it. It's
definitely not for everybody.
No,
I mean, there's a drive, I think, with a certain percentage of people that's just in their blood, and it's not just something that they do, they have to do it.
And I think, you know, my dad it wasn't his thing was mainly sports. He grew up, his dad was a coach, and he grew up baseball, football, basketball. He grew up doing sports. And when my parents got divorced and my stepdad came into the picture, he actually did hunt. And we, a number of times, helped to clean up the meat from elk that he would get. Then he stopped hunting as well, probably in my mid to late teens. He decided not to hunt anymore either. I didn't come from that background, and I didn't really understand the draw. I didn't understand the passion of
the
it.
reasoning.
Or the reasoning. You know, for me, my family was a family of animal lovers kind of thing, and you know, it was like I think that it's important to remember that, you know, we all have different ideas about what death means. And so the whole idea that, you know, you're actually killing something, I think that's a big place for a lot of people to go, even though we were never vegetarian. We were always eating meat, you know, of some sort. But I'll say my mom didn't eat. My parents did not eat red meat when I was younger. They ate no red meat. My mom did not actually start eating any red meat until my stepdad came into the picture, and then she would only eat buffalo and some elk. But she still to this day does not eat beef. So she, you know, they did kind of walk that way, but we were never vegetarian, and it just wasn't something that was in our life. So when I met Ryan, he comes from a family of hunters. His dad is a hunter. His cousin hunts. You know, his grandpa hunted. He has that in his blood, and he's got it pretty strong in his blood. You know, if I were to tell Ryan you can't hunt anymore, that wouldn't work. So, you know, I'll admit that, you know, for a lot of the time I wasn't very supportive of it, and starting this podcast, I think, is a good way for us to kind of get the platform out there for the couples and the relationships that do struggle.
I think,
with the topic.
This will kind of show like how it's evolved, like you being a non-hunter and me being a hunter, and
right.
You know, we've butted heads for quite a few years and
right.
over this, and you know, I think we've both come to the realization that, you know, she understands it better now. Why I do it and actually what I do. And, you know, in the beginning, I think there's just, there's a little bit of misinformation or maybe not understanding, you know, the respect that hunters have for animals. And, you know, most people, when they're not around a hunter, they just get what is fed to them through Hollywood or the media or whatever. Hunters are just out there killing animals and, shooting everything, and there's no animals left and this and that. And then when you actually, talk to somebody who does hunt or spends a lot of time in the outdoors, it's just not the case. So, I think she's come to the realization and figured out things that, it's not what they tell you through Hollywood. The movies, they can be a little deceptive. So,
well, it's not. Deceptive. And I think that there's also something to be said about just the relationships in general with couples where one person has a very strong hobby and our hobbies, and it could be hunting, it could be fishing, it could be football. There's a lot of different things that guys and girls do.
Everybody's got a passion, and
and sometimes when it becomes a bit obsessive, how is the person on the other side? How are they coping with that, and how are they dealing with that? And is the person who's doing the hobby, realizing that there's a struggle for the other person? So there's like a lot of awareness that comes into this topic. But I was just bringing this up.
And we've had conversations with other couples that have struggled with the same things that we did for years,
Well, the reason I'm doing this actually is I started listening to Brian Call's podcast, the Gritty. Why? I have no idea. Ryan's like, you got to listen to this podcast. I started listening to it here and there.
Phenomenal.
Well, I don't hunt, but for those of you who know Brian, you just listen to him talk, and the more I've learned about Brian, it's probably because he's an entrepreneur. He's more like me because I'm more entrepreneurial. I build businesses. I like that. I like reading books. I like learning. I can tell now why I was drawn to him, but I listen to these podcasts. And when I was cooking dinner, and his podcast came on my phone, and it was Russ Meyer and his wife. Yep. And Brian was talking to them about their life, basically, and their relationship. And Ryan was out in the garden, of course. He was out in the garden for a while, and listen to this thing. Whoa, this is like my life. And Russ is a lot like Ryan because we know him now. He's kind of quiet. He's not a big talker. His wife is kind of like me. She's doing a lot of talking, and she was struggling with the same things I would. Now the difference was that she used to hunt. I don't hunt, but she had a family, and here he was leaving and doing all this stuff. And Ryan came in. I was like, you need to listen to this podcast. This is like our entire life right here. Being in this relationship 22 years, there's millions of people out there who totally relate to this situation.
Yeah, and we've got that just from talking to people, in the last year. People understand, the how tough it is to have a relationship with a hunter, obviously. So, through this Hunt, Harvest, Health podcast, I think Hillary can kind of explain, what those hardships are and how we've kind of gotten through them. And, that should be pretty interesting, I think, for some people or some couples. Harvest Health podcast, I think Hillary can kind of explain, what those hardships are and how we've kind of gotten through them. And, that should be pretty interesting, I think, for some people or some couples.
Yeah, our goal with this, we've kind of talked a little bit about ourselves here in our relationship and why we're doing this. But, Ryan obviously has tons of knowledge. He has tons of information, tons of stories. He is not a fly-by-night expert. He has spent, as long as I've known him, building experience in the things that he loves to do. Hunting being one of them, gardening being one of them.
Well, he's never an expert, but always learning. Just have
how it is in today's world. Everybody's an expert, but Ryan's like, and honestly, it's taken us a while to even get to this because he's very humble about things, and this whole we started a year ago. He started an Instagram page at my pushing. I was like, you need to share your pictures, and I had no idea how big Instagram was in hunting. I just thought, I'd seen a few pages. I said, you could do this and you should get into social media with what you've done. And,
yeah, you even
came
up with the name of StHealthy Hunter. Yeah. It's like, that's kind of creative. I'll just throw that out there.
I'll take the credit for now. I didn't actually get any of those animals or, suffer for a week in the knee deep, snow with frostbite almost. But, I did make up the name StHealthy Hunter, so I'll take that credit. And then, he started doing the train to hunt, And, we'll probably talk more about Train to Hunt because that was a big part of our life in the last year.
Another part of this podcast, with the health, the training and, how to prevent injuries and, how to maintain ourselves and this, that, and the other. So definitely Train to Hunt will play a big part of that. And what we'll have is maybe just a little bit different as far as the health aspect of it. Because we're such food nerds, I guess. And a lot of people, it just seems like a lot of questions come my way with, food prep and why do you do this or how do you do this or what would be the best way to do this. So I think that's kind of something unique and something we might as well share with everybody.
It's kind of been a fun process to start compiling things that we've just been doing for years.
Well, I think just in the last year, I mean, maybe not just the last year, but it seems like a lot more, hunters, especially, we've kind of seen this new breed of hunter, the hunter athlete, the guy that's really a lot more into the health aspect and not just, going out and taking an animal every year and having that quality meat. It's all everything that's, surrounds that. It's the training before the hunt. It's the recovery. It's the food that you're putting into your body, not just with that animal, but everything else on the side, and when it's not just about the deer or the elk meat, it's everything else that you can do. And, it's a complete lifestyle. It's a way of life. And so definitely there's a lot of exciting things and topics that we'll be able to talk about through this.
What we're hope to do with this podcast is just to educate and, share probably the way the seasons work. It's kind of how we work around here. So this is the fall. We're going to be going into winter here soon. And so we have been doing tons of stuff related to that. It's also a hunting season still. So I think Ryan's getting ready to go on a Montana hunt. Here in a couple weeks. One
adventure left in my schedule this year, so excited about that.
We will have a little bit more time related to doing projects. Winter comes and a lot of things quiet down, and then the spring comes and these magazines start showing up all over the place and tags have to be I don't know. It seems to start really early now. The research that
spring
goes
is a busy time. Yeah, it's research central around here. I mean,
this guy was in medical school. Like the research that goes on for hunting tags is crazy. So,
and then you got the garden prep and getting your soil ready and all that good stuff. Yeah. So, busy time in the spring. But
and then we're hoping to interview some cool people. We in all aspects. So the hunting industry, maybe gardening, food industry,
there's so many people
health,
out there that
relationships, geez.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys out there that nobody hears of, nobody knows about, and they've got all these cool tips and tactics and little secrets that could benefit a lot of us. So hopefully, I've met so many good people through Train to Hunt and through just hunting in general and being out there and even fishing guys. There's so many guys out there that have something to add, and they'd be great guys to interview and talk to and kind of pick their brain and see what we can, get out there for the listeners.
Yep. So do we need to share anything else in this podcast, or did we just...
I think
did we share way too much?
Probably. I don't know.
Yeah, wow. That was fun. But, okay,
so I guess we'll wrap that up with the intro today, and I'll try to knock these out, I don't know, every week, maybe after hunting season.
We appreciate you guys being here and taking the time out of your day.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, that was kind of fun for the first one. We'll like I said, try to get another one knocked out here shortly. So take care, guys. Hey, folks. Thanks for listening to the Hunt Harvest Health Podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, give us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Any comments, ideas, suggestions, feel free to shoot us an email at lampers@StHealthyHunter.com. That's STH. Or go to our website at huntharvesthealth.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at StHealthyHunter or at Doc Hillary. feel free to message me as well through Instagram, as I do really enjoy answering any questions related to gear, hunting, food, or you name it. Tag your photos as well if you'd like at Hunt Harvest Health or Get StHealthy, as we'd love to see what you guys are up to. Thanks. See you next time.